Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am VN Prabhakar, visiting faculty at the Archaeological Sciences Center, IIT Gandhinagar. Under the paper Pre and Protohistoric Cultures of India, we will be looking into the module Science in Ancient India and Overview. At the end of this module, you will be understanding the beginnings of the science in ancient India and also explore how science actually began, and we can also explore some of the important aspects and important periods during which the science made a contribution during the ancient period. To begin with, we will look into some of the key examples we can found in the Indus civilization, one of the earliest civilizations in South India. The Harappans, they had advanced technology. They founded the cities, built large buildings, fortifications, created a lot of metals and other tools. But the evidence for science as such is very limited. There seem to have been some astronomical observations. The streets of the larger cities like Mohenjo-daro, they are aligned to the cardinal directions. And the German scholar Holger Wanske, he proposes that the eastern point was determined by the Pleiades star cluster, that is the Kritika of the Indian astronomical calculations, which was the rising star due to the close to the due east in the 3rd millennium BCE. So several other Bronze Age civilizations like the Egyptian also used Pleiades as an important reference point. So the thesis may have some merit. So the Harappans could have observed this star as the pole star and could have aligned the streets and the cities according to the cardinal directions. There are also some evidences like what we find at Mohenjo-daro. There are certain ring stones. They were actually pillar elements, but a very few of them could have been used as a calendrical devices. One of the scholars, Erka Maula, proposes that the series of small holes drilled in some of these pillar members may have traced the path of the sun through the year, as it can be seen from Mohenjo-daro. With the help of a compass attached to the pair of larger holes, this could be examined as a possibility, but the conjecture is yet to be proved or disproved as per the scientific norms. One more important artifact coming from Lothal, and many more also now discovered at sites like Dholavira. This object made out of shell, it is so well crafted and manufactured. It was interpreted as a compass by the excavator S.R. Rao. One can draw angles of 45 degrees and 90 degrees or any angle based on the grooves cut into this shell object, and hence it has been interpreted as a compass. The Harappan town planning was also very highly geometric and must have required careful measurements of angles and lengths. So they should have used some sort of equipment for this, and this sort of simple devices could have helped them. Most major structures also followed a simple ratio between length and breadth. This is another important aspect which we observe from many sites like Dholavira, Lothal, then Mohenjo-daro. We have structures constructed with some specific ratios. Whether it is coincidental or it is nearly intentional, it can also be proved, or it can also be examined based on the various other evidences also available from the later period literature. It could also be an auspicious proposition how they were using various ratios and proportions for the construction of the buildings as well as large fortifications. If we venture further into the Vedic and the early historic era, we have several references like there was no Vedic mathematics as such in the Veda. It could have been a misnomer, but what goes by this name is a set of calculation techniques. The Rig Veda, one of the shlokas in the Rig Veda which is shown here, it lists multiples of 10 up to 100,000, and later during the Yajur Veda this calculation goes up to Parardha, or 10 to the power of 12. So that is the kind of calculations they were able to make, from the minutest to the very high calculations. Also there are certain astronomical observations which we find evidence from the Rig Veda. Rig Veda also describes one eclipse. The sun is struck with darkness by an Asura, Swarbhanu, and all creatures looked like one who is bewildered. So this sort of references we find where the astronomical events are recorded in the earliest literature. Rig Veda also records a year of 12 months consisting of 30 days of each month. That's so the 360 lunar days are calculated. In the Krishna Yajurveda, the solar year is 11 days more than the 12 synodic lunar months. So these kind of observations, these kind of calculations are available from the very early period. The same text, that is the Krishna Yajurveda, it also lists the 6 ritus or the seasons, each consisting of 2 months, namely Vasant, Grishma, Varsha, Sharad, Hemant and Shishira. So these seasons, looking into the movement of the sun and variation in the climates, they have been recorded and shown to the public in a good manner. The Aitareya Brahmana, it also makes one references that can be correlated to the property of the earth, that is its spherical nature. It makes an observation that the sun never really sets or rises. Having reached the end of the day, he inverts himself. Thus he makes evening below, day above. Having reached the end of the night, he inverts himself. Thus he makes day below and night above. He never sets. Indeed, he never sets. So this is a very vivid observation in which the sun constantly moving and how the alternate days and nights are formed. The 27 nakshatras also are mentioned in the literature with the earth at the center, mark the apparent path of the moon. They first appear in the Yajurveda, this kind of references and mentioning various nakshatras, namely Kritika, Vrishabha, Rohini, Mithuna, Kataka, all these important constellations they are mentioned, and a similar system was also in Og in Mesopotamia and ancient China. So these kind of movements of stars and presence of stars, which is phenomenal and also common to all the civilizations, have been found mentioned in some of the earliest literatures. So one more aspect in which science is also dealt is the Vedanga Jyotisha, that could be datable to around 1400 BCE. It is one of the earliest scientific texts, and it is on the internal astronomical evidence. It spells out also the seasons, the 27 nakshatras, the concept of 5-year yuga, units of time and time divisions, the number of lunar days, months and cycles in a yuga, and the rules for a calendar. So such detailed specifications and set of rules have been laid out. The notion of intercalary lunar months, the Adhik Masa, to synchronize the lunar year with the solar year. The discrepancy between two accumulating over a few years and a month needs to be artificially inserted. So this sort of notion is also found in this Vedanga literature. It also mentions solstices, the Ayananta and the equinoxes, the Vishuva. So observations of the astronomical movement, how the summer and the winter solstices and equinoxes, they are also equally mentioned due to the continuous years of maybe research and observation of the celestial bodies. It also mentions about the increase and decrease of days and nights. This is another important aspect that also marks some of the shift in the seasons. The longest and the shortest days are specified as 36 and 24 Gatikas. This points to a latitude of about 35 degrees north, such as Kashmir. So what is a Gatika, we'll see in the next slide. So there are also approaches to measure the time, how time is measured in the absence of any clocks in the ancient period. Water clocks were the most common time measuring devices in the ancient civilizations, along with the gnomon or stick, whose shadow could be used to read time. So these sort of indigenous developments were happening to measure the time. In India, the simple water clock, an example is shown here. It consisted of a water bowl floating on water with a hole so that it is calibrated to such a level that it to let the bowl fill up in a fixed time. The bowl floating here, it fills up in a particular period of time, after which it will sink. Water fills up completely, and that's how the time is calculated. This device is known as Gati Yantra, as it measures a Gati or Gatika, that is 24 minutes. Normally it takes 24 minutes for it to fill up and it sinks. So India did not initially have a concept of an hour or of 60 minutes. Instead, 60 Gatika in a day or 30 Muhurta of 48 minutes. So these kind of indigenous calculations were made to arrive at the concept of time and the day and then month and year. We also have evidences of geometrical calculation in some of the earliest literature. The Shulba Sutras, they have good evidence of geometry existing during that period. It is datable to around 8th to 6th centuries BCE, and there are various sutras by Bodhayana, Apastamba, Katyayana, and Manava. So it also mentions about the building of altars for several Vedic rituals or which were performed on special occasions. The altars, they represent the universe through a macrocosm, the microcosm equivalence, and most altars have 5 layers of 200 bricks each. They are constructed one above another, and each layer consisting of around 200 bricks. The bottommost layer represents the earth, the top layer the highest heaven, and the 3 intermediary are representing the intermediary worlds. So that is how the universal concept is represented in these altars, and rituals were performed. Moreover, the human body provides a unit, that is a Purusha, the height of a man with arms extended upward, that is one Purusha for the altars. This is the seed of the later tradition of Vastu Purusha used in classical Indian literature, in which the buildings is in the image of a cosmic man. That's how buildings were conceived, like a head, shoulder, or a hip, or a leg portion of a Purusha, and how the calculations were extended to very large proportions. The notion of sacrifice is also central to fire rituals. Any sacrifice is ultimately a repetition of Prajapati's initial sacrifice, and gods and poets sacrifice the primordial god, and each part of his body became a part of the world. So these kind of eulogies, these kind of identifications were made and several rituals were performed. Some of the examples of complex fire altars are shown here. The left one is the Chakra Chiti, and the right one is the Kurma Chiti, that is a tortoise formed altar. The areas of bricks in layer must add up to a fixed area, usually 7.5 square Purushas. Purushas, again, as I told in the previous slide, it is the height of a man with the arms extended upwards. So this leads to complex geometrical constructions and also calculations, since bricks on each layer are of different shapes, as one can view the images. This is another complex altar. It is known as Shayana Chiti or falcon altar. So even examples of similar kind of altars we find from the archaeological context. This is one Shayana Chiti. It was excavated and datable to the few centuries before the Common Era at Purola. Purola is located in Uttarkashi district of Uttarakhand. Here a large platform-like feature has been constructed in the form of a winged bird. It measures around 24 meters by 18 meters, and it has the same proportions of 4:3 as the Shayana Chiti prescribed in the Shulba Sutras, and it is built on a scale about 2.5 times actually larger in size. Some of the intricate calculations, it is also mentioned in the literature. One such example is shown here, representing the areas of the squares produced separately by the length and breadth of a rectangle together equal the area of the square produced by the diagonal. So one can see the area A plus area B, it equals to area C. So this sort of calculations, it is found in some of the earliest literature. So this is better known as the Pythagoras theorem, enunciated by Euclid around 300 BCE, a few centuries later. Here the theorem is expressed in a purely geometrical form. Also, several other calculations in terms of geometry we see in the literature. For example, dealing with the various shapes of altars and bricks with a fixed area being imposed led to the transformation of geometrical figures. Adding 2 squares below, it is shown below, or subtracting them, turning a rectangle into a square of the same area, and vice versa. So these sort of basic calculations were also understood, and the doubling of a square led to the value of square root of 2, which is equivalent to 1.414215, which is correct to the 5th decimal. So some sort of precision has already been reached by making these kind of calculations. The Indian numeral system, it is also a highly developed one, and they have used these numerals in several inscriptions and other records, the numerals in the inscriptions, they appear as early as the 1st centuries BCE and the current era, but it is a non-positional system, that is without place value, like the Roman numerals. So that's how one example can be seen here, how 40 is represented. It is represented as 2020. Two 20 symbols are represented side by side, showing it to be the symbol for 40. The Brahmi numerals will evolve into the so-called Arabic numerals, and which was relayed to Europe by the Arabs centuries later. This is the picture which shows the development of the symbol 4, Arabic symbol 4, which is actually derived or could have been derived from the Indian numeral system, as the chart shows very clearly how the initial 4 numeral in the Indian numeral system ultimately led to the Arabic numeral 4 and ultimately adopted by the Europeans. So these numerals are also called Hindu-Arabic numerals as per the Webster dictionary. Metrology is another aspect for which evidence is found from the early literature. The system of linear units developed in the late Vedic era that can be found in many of the literature, and during the early historical era, which is shown here in the right part, that is from Arthashastra, they were systematically defined, but often with variations for various professions. Depending upon the professions, they also had some minor variations, like the builders, the carpenters, etc. They used their own specific needs also sometimes. The units of area, volume, weight were also made into systems, some of which were in use in India until the metric system ultimately took over. So how we can see how the angula is measured, or that is the basic unit. Angula is equal to 8 yava, that is the barley seeds. So based on the seeds and other natural elements which is available to them, the basic units were developed, and from the basic units ultimately the bigger units were formed. So we can see examples from angula. They are ultimately landing upon the purusha, that is the 108 angula, and one purusha, as I told you earlier, is equivalent to the height of a man with the arms stretched upwards. Coming to another phase of literature, the Siddhantic or the classical era. Here we find decimal place values in the numeral system. One of the examples comes from a 1st century CE work by the Buddhist philosopher Vasumitra, and a Jain cosmological work Loka Vibhaga of the 5th century CE. It gradually spread across India and was taken into Europe by the Arabs. We have one inscription, one of the first inscription which uses this decimal place value system, that is from a site known as Sankheda, Gujarat, that is datable to 6th century CE. The first 0 is recorded in an inscription of 578 AD CE at Urlam in Andhra Pradesh. So we have evidences of this kind of adaptation of the decimal based numerical system emerging in the historical records. One question persists is, do we know how much knowledge we have based on these evidences, historical literatures or manuscripts available to us? So one of the historians in 2002 of Indian science, K.V. Sharma, he published a list of nearly 3,473 science texts compiled from nearly 12,244 science manuscripts found in 400 repositories in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So out of these 3,473 texts, no more than 7% are available in print. So that is the kind of less knowledge we have in terms of vast knowledge which is available in the form of manuscripts and texts, but only 7% is available in the form of a printed form. So historians of science have not studied the remaining 93%, so that is a very big proportion, and thus regard this 7% as the whole and soul of the contribution of India to science. So this is a kind of argument which is available from the available printed matter only and discarding all other unprinted matter. So we need much more studies to be carried out of all the manuscripts and try to probe into much further into the historical literature to understand the contribution to science by the Indian culture. For example, the text mention a few names of predecessors of Aryabhatta as well as of his disciples, but the works have disappeared. So this is another major loss. Aryabhatta's own Arya Siddhanta is not available. Some recovery of these last texts, they are possible through the numerous commentaries on the Siddhantas or the treatises. For instance, there are at least two major commentaries on Aryabhatta, which shows the text's wide influence or wide popularity. Aryabhatta was later translated into the Arabic around 800 CE as Jiz al-Arjabahar. So this was translated into Latin in the 13th century, and Aryabhatta was also known as Ardubarius in medieval Europe. So that is the popularity and how the philosophical things and how the scientific interpretations they were reaching to the Western world. So one of the examples of the calculations or the observations of Aryabhatta is the table of sines, Ardhajya or half chord. For every 3.75 degrees up to 90 degrees, that is equivalent to 24 divisions, all values correct to the fourth or the fifth decimal. So the Greek mathematics dealt with the full chord. The half chord is more useful as it is the sign of the off angle. The signs were indispensable in astronomical trigonometry, and Aryabhatta, his numeral notation which is shown above, was alphabetical with consonant standings for numbers 1 to 25 and then 30, 40 and up to 100, and vowels for the powers of 10. So its advantage is mainly mnemonic, and it will be improved upon later. So these kind of contributions were made as early as nearly 1500 years ago. So that is the kind of contribution one can see. There are other contributions of Aryabhatta also. He proposed that pi is equal to 3.1416, adding it was an approximate value, but how accurate it could be ultimately. He also gave the formula for the area of the triangle. His formulas for the volumes of sphere and the pyramid were wrong, however, but he also gave precise algorithm to extract square and cubic roots of numerals. He also worked out a Kutaka, the pulverizing method, to find integral solutions to linear equations of the type ax plus c equal to by. The Kutaka is also basically an algorithmic method which playing on the equations coefficients. So it is the foundation for later methods dealing with more complex equations. So equations for which integral solutions alone were sought were part of astronomical calculation. So these are all some of the contributions of Aryabhatta, one can say, looking into the earliest literature and the commentaries made upon. Aryabhatta, as we know, he has also made contribution in the astronomical aspects. He observed that the earth is a rotating sphere hanging in space. This causes the rising and setting of sun, not to be confused with the heliocentrism. So he also gave the diameter of the earth as 1050 yojanas. 1 yojana is equal to 8000 human heights in Aryabhatta system, or about 13.6 kilometer. Its circumference therefore is equivalent to 44,860 kilometer, or about 12% too large. So he made a bigger calculation for the earth's diameter. However, Aryabhatta makes the planets smaller than the moon and the sun's diameter about 4 times that of the earth, so which is a inadequate planetary model. So he made some mistakes also. He also proposes a correct understanding of the eclipses. The moon eclipses the sun, and the great shadow of the earth eclipses the moon. So he made these kind of observations. Some of them are correct, some of them are incorrect. Another scholar, Brahmagupta, who lived in Beenmala in North Gujarat, he also contributed in the form of a major work, Brahmasputra Siddhanta, and he introduced the concept of negative integers and spelled out all rules of their combination with positive integers or with themselves. He also explored the relationship between 0 and infinity, so which is much earlier when compared to the European concept, that is nearly 1000 years earlier, ahead of the Europeans, observed by George Ifra. He observes that 1000 years ahead of Europeans, the Indian savants knew that the 0 and infinity were mutually inverse notions. So this is one sort of earliest understanding of the 0 and the infinity values by the Indian mathematicians. Brahmagupta is also credited to be the founder of the modern algebra. He is regarded as one of the founders, maybe not exclusively the main founder, but he could be one of the founders. His algorithmic model called Bhavana, or composition, creation, production and generation, worked out integral solutions for second order indeterminate equations of the so-called Pell's equation, which was propounded in 17th century CE. The Swiss mathematician Euler independently rediscovered Brahmagupta's algorithm and called it Theorema Eximium, that is the theorem of capital importance. So these kind of calculations were in vogue much earlier in the Indian context. Brahmagupta also demonstrated that one set of solutions having been found, an infinite number of sets can be produced. This result was rediscovered by the French mathematician Pierre de Fermat in the 17th century CE. The 20th century French mathematician André Ville noted that what would have been Fermat's astonishment if some missionary just back from India had told him that his problem had been successfully tackled by native mathematicians almost 6 centuries earlier. Bhaskara too, or Bhaskaracharya, is another mathematician who is credited with some improvement on the Brahmagupta's work. He lived in the 12th century CE in the Maharashtra, northern Karnataka area, who developed the cyclic method, Chakravala, that is the smallest solutions to 61x square plus 1 equal to y square. So this kind of calculations which were later reached with the same solutions of this equation in the 18th century, but through a less parsimonious method. So even though the calculations were very complicated to the earlier period, the concept was available. The German historian of mathematics Hankel wrote on the Chakravala, "It is beyond all praise. It is certainly the finest thing achieved in the theory of numbers before Lagrange." So these kind of observations have been made and appreciated the knowledge system of ancient India. Bhaskara too, he also worked out solutions to cubic and biquadratic equations and introduced a notion equivalent to the derivative of a sine function in relation to the velocity of planets. His work Leelavati put mathematical problems in poetical terms, building on a tradition initiated by the earlier mathematicians such as Bhaskara and Mahavira. The problems are addressed to an unknown beautiful woman, Leelavati, whom later legend suggested was his daughter. There are other several examples from parts of India, like for example from Kerala, it is a kind of several people, several scholars working on various aspects, like we can see from starting from the 4th century CE onwards up to the 18th, 19th century, we can see several examples of scholars working, and their works are also known in the form of literary forms, which can throw much light on the knowledge system in ancient India. So Madhava is one such mathematician who lived during the 14th century CE. He formulated the power series expansion for trigonometric functions, including the so-called Grigori series, which was propounded in the 17th century, and the first of the three is shown here. And here the formula of x equal to 1 yields an infinite series for pi, but in a slowly convergent series. So this kind of complex mathematical calculations were also mastered and attempted and used for various purposes. He also made detailed calculations of the orbits of sun, moon and planets. The true and the mean positions were calculated by him, and a detailed study of eclipses including beginning, ending, midpoint, duration, totality, etc. He also made excellent trigonometric approximations for equations of orbits, which with corrections Bija Samskara introduced wherever necessary. So this is the kind of contributions Bhaskara has made. And Parameshwara, another scholar belonging to the 14th, 15th century and author of nearly 30 works of astronomy, he made observations of the eclipses over 55 years and consequently propounded correction techniques also to identify and propose eclipses. Nilakanta Somayaji is another mathematician who lived during the 15th or 16th century. He showed the differential of the sine function in proportion to the cosine function, and he also propounded a formula for the sum of several convergent infinite series. He was the author of the Tantra Sangraha, and which was a unified theory of planetary latitudes and a better formulation of the orbits of interior planets, that is the Mercury and Venus, than was available in earlier Indian works or in Islamic or the European astronomy until Kepler. So in its planetary model, the sun moves around the earth with all other planets moving around it, same as Tycho Brahe and few decades before Copernicus. So he also carried out a major revision of older Indian planetary model for the inferior planets, Buddha, that is Mercury, Shukra, that is Venus, and described them along with Mangal or Kuja, that is Mars, Brihaspati or Guru, Jupiter, and Shani, Saturn, as moving in eccentric orbits around the sun. His calculation on the planetary model, that is the sun moving around the earth, of course it is incorrect, but later much knowledge developed, and these things came into a clear understanding later on. Jeshtadeva is another mathematician who lived during the 16th and 17th century. He composed a comprehensive text in Malayalam, Ganita Yukti Bhasha, which is a systematic exposition of the rationale of mathematics in part 1 and of astronomy in part 2. Now recently it is also published with an English translation. He worked out a better series for the value of pi. For n equal to 50, it yields an average of pi correct to 11 decimal places, and the equation is also shown here. He used the derivatives for trigonometric functions and integration procedures to calculate the area and volume of a sphere. And if we look into the Indian scientific minds, they have made several calculations on the number of years and the division of different yugas and eras, and we can see from the example how they have assigned number of years to each one of the yuga. Like in the time scale in Mahabharata, it is mentioned about the Satya, Treta, Dwapara and Kali Yuga, and all the Chatur Yuga it approximates to over 4 million years. So these sort of calculations, large calculations were made and conceived, and Mahayuga is or one kalpa that is equal to 1000 years. Chaturyuga it's equivalent to around 4 million years ago, which is the duration of the day of Brahma. So these kind of calculations and conceiving a very large number of years of history has been made in the Indian time scale, which is rather very small if we look into the other time scales, like in the Judeo-Christian time scale, not even earlier, before the 4th or 5th millennium BCE. So if we explore further, there could be some borrowings also, there could be some cross-cultural interactions which helped in the various developments in the Indian knowledge system also possible. Like the hour of 60 minutes is probably of Mesopotamian origin. Through the Greeks also developed this kind of system. Also the 7-day week, it is introduced in India only a few centuries before the current era. The concept of solar zodiac with the 12 signs or Rashis is probably from Greece, recording in Yavana Jataka, datable to 3rd century CE. In the 9th century CE, the Caliph Harun al-Rashid established in Baghdad the House of Wisdom. It sought scholars from Europe and Asia to translate scientific texts, Greek and Indian ones specifically, into Arabic. So one of the India's greatest gifts, that is the decimal place value system of numeral notation, which is also called as the Hisab al-Hind in Arabic. So that is one of the greatest contribution. Al-Khwarizmi compiled Indian texts wrote on the Indian numerical system and on algebraic logarithms. Translated into Latin, Al-Khawarizm's work relates some of the India's advances to Europe. His own Latinized name, algorithmi, became the origin of the word algorithm. So these kind of intercultural connections also we find, through which the concepts developed in one society is dissipated and transferred into other societies. The Chinese mathematician Yi Xing of the 8th century CE knew the Indian mathematical texts and also makes some references to them. Al-Biruni is one traveler who made his visit to India, also along with Mahmud of Ghazni's entourage, and he authored in 1030 a study of Indian customs and sciences. He also translated texts by Brahmagupta and Varahamihira into Arabic or Persian. He found the locals, Hindus, niggardly in communicating that which they knew. Also, he make an observation that the Mahmud utterly ruined the prosperity of the country and performed their wonderful exploits, by which the locals became like atoms of dust scattered in all directions. This is the reason too why Indian sciences have retired far away from those part of the country conquered by us and have fled to places which our hand cannot yet reach. So there could be an extensive knowledge system which was in existence before the arrival of Al-Biruni, and that could have contributed a lot in understanding the ancient knowledge system. This may have also contributed the fragmentation of the scientific community, and how the interactions help also in spreading the knowledge system, and also it also attracts other forces that can also make a break in the spread of this knowledge system. Both can occur, but other factors can also contribute to the decline of the Indian science. It is not only the major aspect in which forces coming from outside are putting a break, but there could be many other systems. Maybe lack of transmission of knowledge from generation to another generation could be one reason. If we explore further and what we obtain from looking into the module is that looking into more into the scientific mind of the Indians, the interface between Shastra, that is the science and theory, and Loka Parampara, actual practices and tradition, it is plainly visible in the concern for calendars, eclipses, solstices and equinoxes, in medicine, especially in Ayurveda, in Shilpa or Vastu Shastra, in agriculture and water management. We find various insights of the Indian scientific mind, and who have made contributions a lot in these fields. Little interest in absolute laws and in axiomatics, unlike the Greeks, more in pragmatic methods. That is one of the Indian scientific mind. Hence, a great skill for developing of efficient algorithms. So this is one another uniqueness of the ancient knowledge system. Nevertheless, a notion of proof, upapatti, does exist, especially in the commentaries. For example, Jeshtadeva's Yukti Bhasha of the 16th century CE, and however the observations which have been made have to be validated. That's how the intellectual dialogue, free from dogmas of the sort that restrained science in medieval Europe. So Indian knowledge system, in terms of its uniqueness, in terms of its earliest calculations, in terms of its findings and other contributions in several aspects, particularly in the field of geometry and astronomy, is well advanced when comparable to the concepts which developed later in several other countries. So this is one aspect we can find out, or we can derive from understanding this module. And for further more information, you can refer to other modules and other quadrants of this module by logging on into the EPG Pathshala website.